Welcome back to Last Choice TV Reviews, The Winchesters. This is Season 1, Episode 2. My name is James III. I'm filling in for Ender, who is out for the next couple of weeks. He will miss Episodes 2 and 3, but he will be back starting with Episode 4. He's super excited to dive into this. As you guys know from Episode 1, this is one of his most beloved series of all time, while Supernatural was. So he's super excited and hoping that this will do the same for him. And he's hoping to be along for the ride with all the super fans out there, the Supernatural fans and now Winchester fans, and bring in some new fans as he breaks down each and every episode each week as we go along. Now, I want to leave a little disclaimer here. I did not watch Supernatural. I think I saw about 3/4 of the way through the first season years ago. I'm a huge CW fan. I've seen In the Dark. I watch all the DC shows. I'm a big nerd on all that stuff. So I love kind of the CW setups. But this is something I've never really got into for really no other reason than time, right? Supernatural's a long series. And as I started to watch the first season, I was like, whoa, there's so many seasons. I'm not sure this is... I have the time to invest into this at the time. But this series, doing a little prequel and not knowing, Ender and I thought would be a lot of fun for me to jump in and kind of be a first-time viewer to relate to people that don't know a lot of the background with Supernatural. And we can kind of banter back and forth. Now, I think that's going to be a lot of fun. If you're listening to us over on The House of the Dragon, Last Choice TV Reviews The House of the Dragon, we did a lot there as well. So we do have a good time together. Now, the disclaimer is I'm not going to know all the Easter eggs. I'm not going to know all the lore behind everything, and I'm learning as someone that is just watching it fresh. So I hope you guys enjoy that, and anything that I do miss, please leave comments, reach out to us, make fun of me if you want. I don't care. I love to learn a little bit more, and I'm very excited to this, and I don't want you guys to miss too many episodes while Ender is out, so I am jumping in blind and trying my best. I watched the first 2 episodes last night, and I'm going to be watching episode 3 here in a little bit and getting that episode out. So let's dive right in and do the best that I can. Now, we start this episode in this, I guess we find out later it's some sort of hippie commune, right? So you've got this guy, Barry, who's leaving some sort of cult-looking meditation thing they may have just done. Maybe they're all drugged up, high. I'm not 100% sure. But they're walking out. He's walking out of the woods with this girl. And he's kind of moaning. He's talking about how he's all enlightened now. And she's like, relax. We're done with the circle. Let's just go have a good time. I'm assuming they're going to hook up, whatever they do. And as they're walking through the woods, the music starts to get a little creepy. So we know as the viewer something bad is about to happen. Now, Barry keeps walking. He says, Dad. He looks over. He thinks he sees his dad in the woods, which I was like immediately, no, that's weird. Why is his dad just chilling out in the woods looking for him? This can't be real. The girl's like, where are you going? Like, what's wrong with you? She's assuming that these drugs are so strong that he's like hallucinating. She's like, I knew this stuff was laced. Goes and finds his dad, and he says, it's time to come home. Barry says, it's too late. I'm letting you go. I don't want to be with you anymore. And the dad's like, I said it's time. Next thing you know, listen, bro. These vines shoot out of his arms, wrap him all up, and he's screaming and yelling. The girl's trying to see what's going on. And as he's getting sucked into these vines, boom, the Winchester screen pops up. And I'm like, oh God, here we go. I'm like, why is this scary? Why we gotta watch scary stuff? This is why I'm not on the Last Choice on the Left horror podcast. But nonetheless, we jump right in to this area in Savannah, Georgia, some sort of warehouse. You see this big symbol in the middle. I'm assuming it's some sort of symbol that the middle letters and all this stuff that Ender has broken down in the first episode goes on. Remember, the 4 of them decided to follow something to do with the Akrita, and Mary's still trying to find her dad. So they go to this warehouse, and to kind of break things down here, they realize that everything is just zombified. There's dead zombies everywhere. They're looking for clues, and they're kind of searching around. And Ada's there with them as well, so there's 5 of them, actually. And Lada's looking at the zombies. She's like, oh, they're twice dead. There's a dislocated jaw, and she's trying to understand what's going on with these zombies, and they're researching them. Now, of course, Mary finds a shotgun shell, and she assumes this must be from her dad. There is no information on the Akrita. Ada says all the files are gone, but she basically says, hey, my dad was here. He made it out alive. This is his shotgun shell. It's signature. He taught me how to make shotgun shells. You're like, okay, cool. In the middle of this, zombies attack. And it's just like out of the nowhere. They're like going at it. And what I found interesting is like, for the most part, they're all kind of fighting them at the beginning, but it's really just John. Now, Lana's trying to get this box to work. Remember the box from the first episode where they could open up and they referred to it as the Ghostbusters ghost trap, right? Now, Lana can't get the box open. She doesn't know why. They've stabbed a few of these zombies. John's still fighting a zombie. They're freaking out all over the place. They're all kind of laughing, which I thought was weird. I'm like, John's like fighting for his life. I guess since it's not a zombie show, you're not worried about him getting bit. So I guess the urgency might not be the same. Like, I'm a big Walking Dead fan, so you're always worried about someone getting bit. But as they're fighting, Mary throws this knife across the room, killing the last zombie that had John pinned down. Now, I thought this was funny because this is something I want to bring up towards the end of this episode here. I want to talk about bookends. John gets covered in blood and there's zombie stuff all in his mouth. It's kind of disgusting. Now, this is obviously foreshadowing something that's going to be at the end of the episode. For those that have watched, you'll already know what I'm talking about. But in the first episode, I thought they did a great job. And this might be a theme that we see from episode to episode. I'd love to hear Ender's thoughts. He didn't mention this, but I did. I noticed this. The coffee, when John gave Mary the coffee at the beginning, it was like, oh, here, I got you coffee black. I assume that's how you liked it because that's how you look at the world. And at the very end, she did, I got you coffee sweet because that's how you see the world. And it was kind of their banter. Ender did talk about there's a lot of dry chemistry right now between these two characters, and we know they go on to be husband and wife, so they've got to build up this romance and this character development. We got to see that. For those that are deep into Supernatural, you have all that character development. You're probably not used to the beginning again, where you've got to build these characters into closeness. So you're going to see this theme bookended, just like John got all the blood. You're going to see later in this episode as it ends, he's going to end up with the same thing, basically due to the cause of Mary as well. So I like to call that a bookending. Now, as they go around to get more clues, Mary's ready to be like, okay, we got to go find this. They find this clue where this kid has disappeared, which essentially is the story about Barry that we just learned at the beginning. Now, she says, we got to go. Carlos is kind of hesitant. He's like, why are we leaving right now? We need to focus a little bit more on this Akrita and what's going on. And she's like, this is where the Akrita are. This is where we're going. She's like, just taking charge of the group. And Carlos is frustrated. He's like, so just like your dad, you're going to take charge of everything. And we don't have anything. There's nothing that we can do about it. We don't have a say. And she's like, I'm taking up just like my dad did. So I'm in charge. If you want to be a part of this, you got to go. Now, it cuts through right after this. We see they're back in the mystery van, the mystery machine, the Scooby-Doo wagon. And John and Mary are up front. They're talking a little bit. He's hesitating about maybe being a hunter. He's like, I'm not really sure if I know how to do this. Like, what can I do this? And she reminds him, hey, when you were in the Marines, did you know how to be a scout on day one? No, you had to learn. So he's going to have to learn. So she kind of lightens him up a little bit. And again, I think this is their more of an attempt to build the characters up. They have a little bit of banter. He talks about killing all these zombies. He's like, I killed all these zombies. And she's like, well, technically you only killed one because she threw the knife and killed the other. Now, after this, we cut to John's mom. She's looking through a box of things. You got to assume that's her and her husband. I believe, don't kill me, guys, if I'm wrong. I believe that might be Henry. And as she's looking through a box of things, the kids pull up. John gets out, and immediately the mom has lost her mind. She's screaming at him. You know, you said you were going to come home. That's the one thing I asked. And, you know, you didn't do that. Like, here you are. You're showing up, and you have blood, everything. And he's like, well, that's not my blood. And then there's the car there, and she's like, you left this trashed car. And he says, first, that's my friend's car. And it cuts over, and I think that's an Impala. And correct me if I'm wrong, and Ender's going to kill me that I don't know this, but he mentioned about a famous Impala that's important to these two characters. Is that the car for those that are Supernatural fans? Is that the car that we're talking about? And it's just blue back in the day, and it was her car and not his car? I'm not 100% sure. But he gets in this big fight with his mom, and he's like, screw you, this is what dad, I was born to do this, going out. So they have this fight. Now the 4 kids leave, and now the next thing you see is it cuts to John and Mary. They are out front of this house getting dressed up, and she says, hey, just remember, all we're here to do is pretend that we're college friends of Barry, and we're going to talk to his dad, and we're going to find out more information. Here's the fake IDs that Carlos gave us. Now, I love this because the music in this show, I think, is amazing. I love it. It might be the only reason, it might be the one thing to suck me into the show. I could probably get my dad to watch the show because of the music. But their fake IDs are Mick Fleetwood and Christine McVie. Of course, the 2 that were married in part of Fleetwood Mac. I think it's funny back then. I'm not sure how popular they were back then to where the average person would know. But reluctantly, John just kind of laughs and says, are you kidding me? This is going to work. Walks right up, knocks on the door. The father answers, and he's like, hey, I'm Mick Fleetwood, and this is my friend Christy. Like this, John's like, this clearly isn't going to work. But the dad says, can I help you? And he says, hey, we were friends of Barry's. We just want to talk. Reluctantly, the father lets the 2 of them in there. Now, I thought this is interesting. Again, it's just setting up kind of the banter between Mary and John and how well they can work together. I think that, again, just an attempt at slowly trying to build these 2 characters. That's going to be the most important theme I think you're going to see over the first season is growing this intensity between these 2 characters. Because remember, as much as there are Supernatural fans watching this, there are new people like me, and we need time to develop this, and a lot of people might not know. You know, unless they look it up, they might not know these are the 2 that end up together. Now we cut to Carlos and Lada in the hotel room, and Carlos is basically being a big baby that he doesn't know if he can work with Mary because she's trying to take charge of everything. He's like, hey, Lada, you're made to be in a band. He relates everything to music. I love this character so much, just like Ender said. He's probably one of my favorites. He says, I'm not used to being in a band. I can't be second string, essentially. He wants to be there right in the heart of it, making the decisions. Lada basically kind of laughs him off and, relax, calm down. Now, Mary and John bust in, say, hey, no sign of the Akrita, but we are, obviously there's some sort of monster. There's a case here, so we've got to solve this case. And this is what we're going to do. Of course, Carlos breaks out into song. He starts singing The Age of Aquarius. And you see it kind of cut back a little bit. And John's like, what are you doing? I don't understand what's happening. And what Mary basically says, he's excited because we have to go undercover into this commune. So this hippie commune, as the Age of Aquarius music, it's all about the music in the show, like I said, is playing. They're all excited and they're playing a tambourine. And next thing you know, you see them in this hippie commune dressed up. Now, it immediately gave me Legends of Tomorrow vibes. I told you I'm a big CW fan. I don't know how much relation any of the writers or how shows are set up work for the CW. I'm not that deep involved with some of them. But it immediately gave me that kind of vibe of seeing the Legends guys switch to a different time period and dress up and be undercover. I can't imagine that it's going to be like this every episode. But like I said, just for this episode alone, definitely gave me those vibes. So I was like, okay, I'm kind of into this. I got you. Now, we see them talking to Barry's girlfriend or the girl that Barry was talking to, and she lets them know, what she saw, but she's pretty sure anything that's like sounds crazy, it's just the drugs. She's like, it had to have been the drugs. They must have been strong. There's no way I saw that. Now, of course, our 4 heroes here, they know better than that. They understand the demons and all that stuff exist. So they know that, okay, there's probably a lot more to this, so we need to investigate. Now, she does mention that Clyde, a guy named Clyde, and he could be in charge of everything, or maybe he knows a little bit more of what happened with Barry. Because as far as she's concerned, Barry just, left at the time, but now she's not 100% sure what's going on. So they cut to, you see John and Mary following Clyde. And he's got this other girl, and he's hyping up the place, and he's talking about this is a sanctuary where people have left. They've escaped their basically parental figures is what I got out of this. It's like people just trying to escape the beliefs and the things with their parents. This is kind of where they run away to. Now, while they're talking, all this hoopla that Clyde's selling to this other girl, you can see John and Mary again are just like rolling their eyes like, what are we doing here? And Mary says, there's something about that necklace. I feel like I've seen that before. Let's go check out with Latika. She's got a ton of books. Let's see if we can find this. From there, we cut back to the Winchesters' garage where John's mom is working on this truck. She's kind of under the hood or underneath it. Ada is there. Ada. Not sure the name. Don't kill me 100% here. But she says, hey, I just wanted to check in with you, see how things are going. And the mom, John's mom, is not really having it. She's like, whatever, this is how John is. Ada says to give him time. Just expect this, it'll be okay. And the mom's like, well, I'm not really sure what's going on. This is how he is. You'll just understand that. And she says, no, I learned this from his father. To which John's mom kind of looks suspect, like, what do you mean? And Ada quickly relieves her and says, hey, it's not like that. We just worked together. He loved you. He loved his family. And as she's about to go, she gives John's mom a note, which is basically the address of the hotel that the kids are staying at. So the mom says, thank you very much for this. Obviously, they build a little bond there. Now, as Ada's about to leave, she says, hey, is it okay if I take some of that vine that you have out front? The mom says, yeah, sure. Henry planted this a long time ago. Her husband, she's confused that it's still living because she never took care of it. She doesn't even know how to take care of it. To which Ada says, well, hey, this is Jasmine. And he put it there because it's for protection. And you see this moment with the mom is, Henry's wife is just kind of like, oh, okay. Like she's starting to realize that Henry was doing a lot of things to protect her. Ada leaves. That's the end of that. Next thing, we cut back to the hippie commune. Super excited. We're in the mystery machine, the Scooby-Doo wagon. We're in the back of it. Lada's looking through these books, and she finds the symbol from the necklace. And this relates to what they call must be a monster, which is a shapeshifter. And of course, Mary quickly, must be a shapeshifter. We got to figure it out. And this is how it is. So they close the van doors and off they go. Now we cut to Clyde and the girl. We're still under the suspectfulness that Clyde has something to do with this monster that kidnapped Barry. So at this point, as a viewer, you're kind of like, okay, Clyde's about to take this girl. We're going to see what's going on. He's a shapeshifter, whatnot. But they don't know what type of shapeshifter. Now, as Clyde's walking through, he is kind of talking with this girl again, trying to hype her all up. And he sees this sister, this like nun that he had been complaining about, that's who he escaped from, just like Barry was trying to escape from his dad. Clyde was trying to escape from this. So you see this nun. He runs off on his own. Again, I'm just like, what are you doing? Barry ran off on his own. Why are you running in the woods off on your own away from this girl? And of course, again, the sister looks at him, the nun looks at him and says, it's time to come home. And vines shoot out of her. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, what is happening here? But the vines shoot out, grab him, wrap him up. The girl walks over. She sees this as he's getting like turned down. Now, as this thing is pulling Clyde down into the ground, you see this monster change a little bit. It's not the nun anymore. It's obviously some sort of demon or monster based on the show. I don't know that personally. I'm just assuming here. But sucks him down into the ground, leaves this flower bed, and the girl is just kind of left at daze. So we cut through to Mary and John walking through the woods, and John is trying to understand how to capture this monster, this shapeshifter. He says, any clue on how to capture this? We don't even know what it is. It can look like anything. And she says, well, you got to look for tells. That's what her dad said. It's going to be things are going to be a little bit off, right? They might say things the wrong way. They might do things differently, but something is definitely off about them. Or they're clearly trying to kill you, which just made me laugh because I was like, well, obviously at that point you would assume what it is. Now, John has second thoughts. He's worried about his mom, the fight that he just had with his mom. He's complaining about his mom. He's like, I'm never going to escape her. Maybe she's right. I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe I'm not meant to be a hunter. And he just kind of have second thoughts, and Mary's trying to calm him down, but he's clearly very upset with the fight that he just had with his mom, which could be something that plays into this episode as we go along. Now, Next thing you hear is Lada and Carlos calling out, hey, come over. They have found the girl. She's completely in a daze and not from doing all the drugs. So they have a little laugh there on that. And they find this flower bed. Obviously, that's the part where Clyde had been taken down. So they realize, okay, Clyde is not the shapeshifter. And Mary goes over and sees all this blood on a tree. And she says, oh, green blood. I know 100% this is a mimic. The shapeshifter that we're looking for, because there's like 15 different types of shapeshifters. This is a mimic. So the only problem is that we need copper weapons to kill the mimic. Carlos is like, whoa, that's a problem because I don't have copper weapons. And to which Mary doesn't really understand. He has all the weapons. And he says, well, I don't make cheap weapons, especially ones made out of pennies, and I don't want to be associated with them because they are lame and cheap. To which Mary's like, great, that's stupid. John says, hey, back at the hotel, in the room, the pipes are copper, so maybe we can make weapons out of that. While they're in the middle of this, Lada interrupts her and says, hey, let's slow down on this, because she goes over and looks at the tree. I don't think this is blood. This is sap. So maybe we're not necessarily looking for a mimic. We need to slow down here a little bit. Mary's very reluctant. Again, just like at the beginning of the episode, Mary's like, nope, I've already made up my mind. This is a mimic. Let's go. Lada says, hey, also there's this flower here. I feel like I've seen this somewhere, but it's not native to here. And again, Mary just says, great, I appreciate you being concerned about that. You can follow up that, but we're here. We got to go kill a mimic. We need to. Basically, she's like, okay, I know that I have to fight this demon, but I just want to get this over with so I can keep looking for my dad. So let's just get through things as fast as absolutely possible, and let's move on. It's all about finding her dad. She doesn't care about the safety of the team or how they do it. She just wants to get through things as fast as possible. Now we cut to Ada is in the lair of the Men of Letters that they had found in the first episode, but a different spot we hadn't seen. And she has this jasmine vine, and she's starting to make some sort of concoction, right? Some sort of, I guess, spell tea. I don't know what she's really doing. But it looks like she's starting to make some sort of tea. In the middle of this, the phone rings, which I thought, like, how does someone know to call her there? Who is this? She picks up the phone, very confused that it's ringing, and it's Lada. To which she's like, oh, hi. And I was like, are we just going to dismiss the fact that Lada knew she was there and knew the phone? Like, how did she know? Maybe I'm just trying to poke holes. Ender said excuse a few things, but like, how did she even know the phone number? Did they know the phone number? I'm not sure. But she wants to ask her about this flower. She says, hey, I found this flower. I need some help with it. Do you have any thoughts on it? She starts to describe the flower. It's purple. It's got this things. And Ada cuts her off and says, hey, are the leaves sharp? And she says, yeah, they're very sharp, and they look like this, that, the other. And then at the same time, they say, does it also smell like bad honey? And it does. So Ada says, hey, I've probably got some books on that. Why don't I look this up and we'll figure it out? And Lada says, nope, I have all kinds of books. They're in the back of the van. I'm sure I have something on it. So Lada loves her book. She's like the researcher of the group. So she's all excited. They hang up the phone, and she's running back to the van to do some research. We stay there with Ada in the room. It was some sort of tea concoction she was making. So she drinks this tea. She has this paper and pen, essentially. And all of a sudden, her head snaps back, and she's freaking out. And after she drinks this stuff, and she starts writing as fast as possible, all these different symbols and designs and lettering, nothing that we can really read or understand. And that's all we're left with. It cuts away from her. And it goes over to John, who quickly pulls up at the mystery machine, gets into the hotel room, and he's ripping pipes out from underneath the sink. And I'm like, oh, here we go. This guy's super strong. Rips some pipes out. And of course, as he rips them out, some of them are broken on the end. And that's going to be his weapon. So that's the copper weapons that they're going to go fight this mimic. Of course, Lada is checking because she doesn't believe it's a mimic. She believes it's something else. John is just determined to follow Mary because that's his really only experience, and he's just going to stick with her. I don't know if it's because of a crush, or he's following blindly, or it's because everything they've been in, she's helped him out, and he's watched her kick the asses of a few demons already. From there, we see Mary and Carlos walking through the woods. Carlos is kind of giving her the third degree on, here you go, taking charge. Why are you doing that? because Mary doesn't understand why why they have the silent treatment going on. And they bring up the fact that the last time the silent treatment happened was over the show Cabaret. And I'm assuming Mary is not a fan of that, and I'm not really sure if I can blame her. But they talk a little bit about this, and Carlos just reminds her that, remember how your dad didn't listen to you and how you felt? Why would you want to do the same thing to us? And Mary does have this moment of clarity of like, okay, maybe he's right. But before we could really have a reaction, we hear some screaming in the woods, and it's Lada running up to them. And she says, she's like, hey, I figured all this stuff out. And Carlos is like, whoa, you could be the mimic. And she's like, I'm not the mimic. And he's like, okay, well, prove it. And basically the way he proves it, this is very CW, the cheesy side of things. He says, when's the last time I gave Mary the silent treatment? And she's like, I thought we were never speaking about that again. Reluctantly, she says, Cabaret. So like, okay, she's not the mimic. She knows who we are. And she's Lada. Now, Lada goes on to not only convince Mary and Carlos that it's not a mimic and a shapeshifter that they're chasing after. She found this book based on this flower, and there's this lore, there's this history of this mother, basically, Latunda. Now, Latunda, the story kind of goes is that they're not really human anything, but that she's this mother that was super cruel to her kids. And basically the lore and the story of this is that at one point she was a real woman. She was controlling. She was an abusive mother. She trapped kids in her home, but one day the kids escaped by hobbling her. Then from that point forward, the Latunda punished her kids. She would recapture them and chop them up to feed to her garden. And any kid or anybody that was disobedient, that's what she did, because she was just cruel, right? So you got to imagine at this point, Mary and Carlos and Lada, they understand that, okay, these people have been captured for being disobedient, and she's taking them to a lair, and she's slowly, because it's not quick. Latunda doesn't kill these people immediately and chop them up into a million pieces, and then that's the end of it. No. It's a slow death where she feeds her flower garden essentially through their bodies. And it takes a long time. Now, in the middle of this, Mary starts to freak out because she realizes, okay, Barry was upset with his father trying to escape, and he got taken by Latunda. Then Clyde was the same thing, had this thing with the sister, the nun, that he was having trouble with. And then Clyde got taken. And Mary tells the group that, hey, I was just talking with John in the woods, and I think he might be in trouble as well. This would be the third case. He was complaining about his mom. He's upset. All this stuff is going on. So clearly this could be something that John is in trouble with. Now, from that, they run off, I'm assuming, to go get in the mystery machine, the Scooby-Doo van. And it cuts to John, who gets a knock on the door as he's about to leave, and it's his mom. Now, as he answers this door, the mom comes in, and they start having this heartfelt talk back and forth. She says, I know you blame yourself with your father. They're back and forth talking about the men of letters, and you have to let things go. And John's like, hey, I don't really want to fight here. But Mom, you have to understand, this is something that I want to do. Yada, yada, yada. And that's kind of how it's led to believe at this point. Now, I, as a viewer, kind of already thought, I don't know if the show did necessarily a good job of making you feel like this is actually his mom, or it could be the mimic after what we just heard Mary say. Well, not the mimic, Latunda. We know that Ada gave her the address, so it could be his mom. So they have this heartfelt talk, but in the middle of this discussion, the mom does mention, as John's like, I'm done talking about this, it's over. She does mention Samuel training her new friend, Mary, and all this stuff. And John says, well, that's the thing. I never mentioned Samuel or Mary to you, because when they had met before, he never did tell his mom Mary's name. The three had just left off, so she hadn't really met any of the other people in this group. Now, John is kind of in a bad spot. He's got these copper pipes. And remember, Mary was insistent that this is a mimic. She didn't want to hear anybody else's theories. This is how it was. It's a mimic. So John's all excited. Like, I learned this poker tip from them. And he takes this copper pipe and he's got to bash Latunda in the head, because in John's eyes, this is clearly a mimic. He knows how to fight this. He already killed the last monster with the silver dagger, so this is going to be easy. Now, Latunda stops this thing, and now it looks just like his mom, but stops this copper pipe cold. It was awesome. And John looks super confused, and basically now Latunda's like, I'm not your mom, and I'm not a mimic either. And John's like, oh, this isn't good. And here you go. The vines come out of his mom, and that's the end of it. Now you see the flower beds there and everything. Now, as we go on, the kids rush up. The mystery machine pulls up. They run out, and Mary's super, super upset because she's like, John has to be here. But you see that flower bed right there on the ground. The other two are kind of already reluctant that he's gone. It's too late. Like, they missed him. Latunda has taken him to her lair. And I was just like, man, there's no thought of, like, he could just be dead. They just assume that he's lair. We'll get him later. Now, she immediately breaks down. Mary finally cracks, and she admits, hey, I'm really sorry. I screwed up. I didn't listen to you guys. And now, look, we've lost John. I've messed everything up. All I cared about was my dad. And all I cared about was doing it the way I thought. Didn't matter what you guys' thoughts were. Now, Carlos is super excited because he's just like in shock that he didn't think at all he'd ever hear Mary apologize. Of course, Lada's like, we don't have time for that right now. John is missing. Get over yourself, Carlos. Kind of hits him. And Mary says, okay, well, what do we do? And instead of making the plan herself, she looks right at Lada. Says, you're the expert on this. So what's the plan? From there, we cut over. We see John and Barry and Clyde all in this lair wrapped up in vines. And it kind of gives you what's going on. John's trying to wake up Clyde. He's like, we got to get out of here, man. And Clyde basically is like, no, we can't. No, you're going to upset her. She'll kill you if we try to leave. All this nonsense. She doesn't like children who disobey. So obviously Clyde's under the spell. John is all about, I don't know why he is a lot more reluctant to get out of there. I don't know if those two had already been punished at this point. And so we have a little bit of back and forth now between the two characters, John with the other two guys in the lair. And we go back to Mary and Lada and Carlos, and they're looking up how to defeat Latunda. And what they find out is that basically her powerful magic is the only thing that can kill her. Something has to be, her heart is where she's most vulnerable. So something, her own magic has to be used against her, stab her in the heart, basically. What they figure out is, hey, we can break the leg of Latunda and use that. They kind of find that to be really twisted. Of course, Lada's like, hey, I'm a pacifist, so don't look at me. I'm not doing the killing. Mary says, okay, I think this is going to work. So her and Carlos are like, yep. So they run off, and they're obviously on their way to the lair. They think they know a way to track it. So again, we have this back and forth. You see Latunda comes into the lair and goes straight over to Barry. And now Latunda changes a lot based on the perspective that I think the show wants you to see Latunda as. So you see Barry's dad there, which is the way Barry sees him. And then it cuts to John is like trying to get out. He breaks free. He breaks Clyde free while Latunda is feeding on Barry. Clyde gets out. Now, for whatever reason, John hangs back, and I'm just like, I don't understand. So, but John's still there. Maybe he thinks he's going to save Barry too. Me personally, I'd have been like, Barry, you've been out here too long. You're lost cause. We're out. Peace. I'm not the hero type, obviously, in that situation. I would have got Clyde. No problem. He was talking, but Barry wasn't. And Latunda's there. What am I going to do? So they start fighting. Latunda breaks away, and you see Latunda now as John's mom, because now the show wants you to see it from John's perspective, and that's what John sees. He doesn't see this monster that Latunda is. He sees his mom. So they're fighting this all-out fight, very similar to episode 1, where John's like fighting this demon, just getting crushed. And in the middle of this fight, the other three rush in. Lada and Carlos immediately run over to Barry, trying to get him free. And Mary starts fighting, and I thought, okay, just like episode 1, Mary's going to come in, whoop this thing's ass. Nope, that is not what happened. Mary gets chucked across the lair by Latunda. And you see this back and forth, looking like Latunda when Mary's fighting, to looking like the mom when you're seeing John's perspective. There's a lot of this back and forth cinematography in that way. So I thought that was pretty cool. And as they're fighting and Mary kind of looks over, John's fighting with Latunda still. Mary yells out, "Go for the leg." And of course, John's looking at his mom. This seems very unlikely. It's very confusing. But of course, he kicks the leg out and it cuts to the Latunda view. And you see this like 2x4, essentially like a stake, fall out from underneath this tree bark thing or whatever. Mary runs up, grabs it, and as Latunda's on her back, stabs Latunda in the heart. John's standing up, and of course, all the green sap and everything right into John's mouth and his shirt and everything. And I talked about this book ending, just like we saw at the beginning of the episode with the dagger killing the zombie and all the stuff all over John's shirt and his face. Now we get the green sap, the same thing, all over John's face and a shirt that have a little bit of laugh. I think there's more connection with the two characters. And again, like I said at the beginning, book ending the two with the two coffee scenes in the first episode, and the two discussing whether it's the zombie blood or Latunda's sappy blood at the end of the episode. So two different sequences, very similar between the two episodes, between these two characters. So all is good. Latunda sucks down to the ground. You assume this thing is dead at this point. They killed it. They did what they needed to do. Now we cut to a car scene where John and Mary are in the car. They see Barry reuniting with his father. There's a very heartwarming moment as they get back together. Barry has a new lease on life, as it were. Next thing you know, the kids are pulling up in the mystery machine, pulling back up to the Winchesters' garage. Lada and Carlos take off, but Mary and John stay behind. Now, before John can say anything, John's mom speaks up and says, "Are you going to introduce me to your friend?" Which I thought was fitting on how the episode had gone at this point. And he says, "This is Mary." She says, "Oh, Mary, that must be your car. I fixed it. It's on the house." And she says, "Oh, thanks." And the mom says, "Well, you can call me Millie. And you brought my son home safe, so you're good to go." Mary drives away. John and his mom decide to have this heartfelt moment. John explains as much as he can how he understands that he was taking the frustration for his dad out on his mom when his dad wasn't there. And he didn't mean to be like that, and he will try to be better, and he will always try to come home, and he'll relate and everything. And the mom says, "I do believe you." She pulls out this picture, and she shows him this picture. I thought this was really cool. Kind of makes you as a viewer reflect on your own relationships as well, right? So this picture, she says, "When your father and I took this, we had just had a big fight," but they look super happy in the photo. And she tells them they had a deal that anytime that they fought, they used to always end all their fights with "I love you." And if he would leave doing his monster stuff, demon stuff, it was always "I love you." Except the last time that he ran off. They had had a big fight. He had left, and they didn't say "I love you" at that point. And, obviously she has carried this. She knows he's dead now. She's carried this all the way through. She's never been able to rectify this, and she's going to always carry this. And it's something I think it's very hard for her. But she promises John, "We can never be like this. I do love you. And I want to make sure we always, when you're leaving, let's not fight. You go off to do your thing, but know that I'm here, and I know that you're going to come home, and know that we love each other." So I thought that was really touching there. Now we cut to everyone in the Men of Letters lair house, their home base, essentially. And they're all eating pizza. Carlos is passing around. Again, the music, Crosby, Stills, and Nash is playing. It's the celebratory ending of the show. This is all great. And Ada walks in, and she says, "Hey, I need to show you guys something." Takes them down to this other lair. And they're like, "I had never seen this part." And they said, "Well, there's many places that you don't know about this area." And she explains to them that she took this tea, which turns her into this demonic thing. Basically, the demon that had entered her was very powerful, but it leaves this echo, essentially. Now, the echo, she can go back and get the echo using this tea that she made, this potion, and turn into this, and she can write down all the information that she can get from that echo. Not a pleasant experience, she explains. It sounds completely horrible. But it's about the Akrita. The demon that possessed her is dead. But the one thing they did know, that the demon knew a lot about the box, and they're hoping that if they can decipher all this stuff that Ada wrote down from getting that echo, they can learn more about the box, they can learn more about the Akrita, and then obviously, hopefully, learn more about Mary's dad and where he is. Now, of course, the music kicks back up. We're celebratory. You think this is the end of it. Carlos just wants to go back to eating his pizza. Now, before the episode ends, it cuts back and forth with them celebrating eating pizza. The music, like I said, is playing. And you see this hooded figure walking through the woods. And it's making its way to Latunda's lair. And as it gets to Latunda's lair, it cuts away. Again, we're cutting back all over the fourth. You see John's mom looking through a box of things, and she's super happy. You think she's come to peace. Looking at all the photos, looking at the watch and all this stuff. And she closes the box like she's closing. I guess that's going to symbolize closing that chapter of her life, and she's going to move forward. Now, we see this hooded figure go into Latunda's lair. Pulls out this like little bottle, opens it up almost like a perfume bottle, and pulls this pink, I guess it's Latunda's spirit, pulls this pink spirit glowing orb thing that comes out of the ground where Latunda died, and bottles it up, and it starts to walk away, and you see the hands of this hooded figure, a bunch of rings on there, which to me, again, Supernatural fans might have an idea of who this person is. I do not. But what I gathered out of that, it looks to be like a woman. And as the camera starts to pan out, you see as they're leaving Latunda's lair, all these demons are chasing the hooded figure. Not chasing after them, but with them. And as they walk away, the camera slowly pans up, and then eventually you get to the end credits. And that brings us to the end of episode 2. Not really sure about this hooded figure. I gotta assume that it's a part of this Akrita, this big threat that this whole series obviously seems to be alluding to. And we're gonna learn more as we go on. I'm sure Ender would have a lot more theories and breakdowns exactly what some of this stuff means. I apologize that I don't know all of that, but like I said, I am very excited to continue the series. I'm gonna work on episode 3 now, and with that being said, guys, I am James III. We will see Ender again by episode 4. And thank you guys so much for all your support. LastChoiceNetwork.com if you want to see our other podcasts. Of course, we have a House of the Dragon show, which is great. A Parents versus Gaming podcast, an anime podcast, a horror podcast, and a Ohio sports podcast as well. We look forward to seeing what you guys think. Let me know in the comments. Like, follow, download, do whatever you guys can do to help us out. And any other way you want to break this down or give your insight, or maybe you're possibly interested in coming on as a guest or speaking up for yourself, we'd love to hear from you. So let us know. Until then, this has been James III. Have a good rest of the night.